I was born being able to talk to the animals, to converse with them. Most of my friends growing up were animals. In fact, I'm going to say all of them. I mean, I had human friends too, but I think I felt more connected with the animal species than the human species. It wasn't until I was about 7, 8 years old, maybe, where I began to think that began to notice that other people weren't able to really understand the animals. They loved them, and I could see the connection, but it wasn't the same. Hi, and welcome to the launch of an amazing new animal show hosted by KT Hart. That's me. I used to be a professional wrestler, but I've also had the honor of working with a variety of animals, from showing horses and dogs to training tigers and wolves to retrieve fake fish from movies. Yeah. Being an animal trainer, behaviorist, and communicator has allowed me to see the world through the eyes of the animals. The concept for my show originally began several years ago when I was an animal trainer, actually working on set. And what I noticed, I'd bring my animals on set, and the celebrities that we were working with, the producers, the directors, and other people, we'd walk in and everybody was really rigid and tight, and they'd see the animal and everyone would just begin to melt. There'd be these smiley faces. They'd go from these hard, rigid, lawyer faces, sorry any lawyers out there, but they would, to these childlike, animated kind of a deal. I started to think, is it possible for us to, remain in that place of happiness most of the time? If not all of the time. The other thing that I keep hearing is this cry for really good shows. So I began to think back then, if there were more shows out there, more television shows and more movies out there that were heartwarming or humorous, focusing on things of the heart, which is nothing but good, then think of how not only your own personal world would change my own world, but everyone around me that I would touch. I mean, you smile at somebody, what happens? They smile back, right? I mean, it's a no-brainer. And then not only just the individual reality, but what would happen globally? And is it possible to create that space of a more happy planet, without drinking Kool-Aid? So I believe it is possible. So that's how the concept of the show began, out of this growing awareness that animals have this amazing ability to open the hearts, inspire, enrich, and completely transform our lives. One segment is retelling stories about how animals have impacted our lives and dramatically changed them at one level or another, including stories about service dogs. I also train service dogs, basically custom make them according to the person's needs. Okay, there's also, there's this other segment too that is going to be, and I really believe this can definitely shift what's going on in our planet. We have a lot of animals on the planet, everything from threatened to endangered. We have these actually extinct lists, but there's some animals that are only alive now in zoos. They're extinct in the wild. But basically, I think a lot of us will give to those causes, but I don't think many of us stop to think what that animal's dwindling numbers on our planet means to us on the other side of the world. In other words, some of us don't think that an animal over in Africa, the black rhino, now on the endangered or basically extinct at this point, how that would affect us. But the fact is that if something happens, it's that ripple effect, the butterfly effect that most of us know about. You can't have something like that dramatic happen and us not be affected by it. So we're going to go into some stories about that. We're going to be bringing awareness of what's going on in the planet through the eyes of conservation, as well as talking about the environment and how that's affected, but also giving helpful tips and things and directing people where we can restore harmony and balance to what is going on. There's a segment that I'm really excited about where I get to share some of my personal unique animal training tips. I'll be going into real houses, and this will be sort of more of a reality component. So I'll be going into real people's houses, real houses, as opposed to non-real houses. You know, meeting their animals, talking with their animals, talking with them, and then bridging the gap of communication between them, giving them some actual training tips, as well as helping them to understand from the animal's perspective what's going on. Because most of us come from our own view of what's going on, you know, and we sort of anthropomorphize what's going on with the animal. In other words, we give them human traits. They're not human. They're an amazing, you know, species all in themselves, and we put these human things on them, and that's usually where the breakdown happens. So that's really cool too. Oh, the other thing too is, you know, being a Hollywood animal trainer, I've got all these basically tools and tricks and things. So I'm going to be sharing those with everybody out there as well, and you can go home or right there actually when I'm teaching it to you, you can work with your dog or your cat or your horse or whatever animal it is that we have at the time and help them. So it's really cool. I'll also be joined in this adventure by my two human daughters, Noelle and Jessie, as well as my co-host, the ever so increasingly handsome Montosaurus Rex. I invite you to pledge now in helping create the world that we all know in our hearts is possible. I send blessing and shine.